Hello everyone, I'm K Swope, and in this video we are going to be reviewing Dexter Season 2. Boy, am I excited for this one. If you did not see already, we did already review Dexter Season 1. Check out the card for more information on that. Go check out that video. I will likely be referring to that video. So, spoilers for Dexter Seasons 1 and 2. And while we're at it, spoilers for everything, because I'm kind of going off script here. I have an outline. Kind of going to go off script, and I might ramble about whatever it might be in the future of Dexter. So spoiler alert for all of it. But speaking of all of it, I do plan on reviewing the next seasons of Dexter. That includes the rest of the original series, plus New Blood and Dexter Original Sin Season 1 at least. So make sure you check out those reviews if they are already finished. If they are not by the time you're watching this, come back. Or, even better, hit that subscribe button and you can see what I have to say about the rest of Dexter. But in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and review Season 2. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So, as I mentioned in the Season 1 review, what I'm going to be doing is breaking the season into plot points, and then ranking the plot points, and then at the end, I'm going to rate the season based upon, generally, how it made me feel. Starting with Dexter's plot points, the main character, obviously. So, he's going through a lot this season. I think this is some of the, debatably, most compelling stuff that we see with Dexter post-Season 1, because what's happening is the FBI are after him. They found where his dumping ground is for the remains of the humans that he has just finished chopping into tiny bits and putting into bags. They find it, and they figured, okay, there's definitely a serial killer here. We need to find out who it is and put a stop to it immediately, because they're just going to keep on killing. That killer, of course, being Dexter, which makes it very, very fascinating. So there's kind of a whole cat and mouse dynamic going on the whole time between the police and the FBI and Dexter, which is funny because he is working for the police, so he's got an inside scoop on things, which kind of helps him get an edge. But to make things even more complicated, remember Rita's husband, Paul, from Season 1? Yeah, so in Season 1, Dexter basically framed him and got him put back in jail, right? Well, Paul knows he's been framed. He's trying to convince Rita of that. Rita eventually finds out he's been framed, and then thinks that Dexter is abusing illicit substances, if you catch my drift. So he starts going to rehab. And they kind of played this really interesting addiction narrative for Dexter's need to kill, which is a very fascinating spin on this. He runs into Satan as a woman incarnate, Lila, who is the absolute worst. Like, literally. I don't think I hate a character more in Dexter than Lila, honestly, because, like, she's awful, okay? And don't get me wrong, the villains in this are, Dexter's a serial killer, okay? But, I mean, the serial killers, they can do this and that, but Lila is just, she screws everything up. Everything that's good in Dexter's life, whether he knows or not, she screws up. And it's like, oh, you're like one of the worst antagonists like ever. So there's that. But the real icing on the cake, the real cherry on top is that Dokes, right? Detective Dokes.
Surprise, mother.
He, after the events of the end of Season 1, is super sus of Dexter to the point where he is stalking him basically now, watching his every move because he knows something's funky, something's up, right? So Dexter has a lot going on this season, and it eventually involves a bunch of entanglements where Dexter starts doing it with Lila, which is kind of painful to watch, honestly, because him and Rita had such a good thing. Dokes eventually catches him red-handed. Lila then, who's actually a crazy arsonist, by the way, she takes care of Dokes for Dexter, which is a weird twist. And basically, they're able to frame everything on Dokes, and Dexter gets off scot-free, which is kind of meh. I have some thoughts on that we'll get to later in some of my notes. But in the meantime, yeah, not fantastic. I will give Dexter's plot points in this season a little worse than last season, so I'm going to give him a 7.5 out of 10. Deb, on the other hand, she is growing really close to a gentleman that we know as Special Agent Lundy. Now, Lundy, he has been working for the FBI for a while. He's an older gentleman. What starts as kind of like a close friendship turns into a romance, which is kind of awkward given that Deb is like at least 20 or 30 years younger than Lundy. So yeah, kind of strange. And then, Deb's tagging on with the FBI things, this, and that. But a lot of her screen time this season, a lot of her own personal story arcs, they basically all have to do with Lundy. So Lundy basically is her story arc. And I give that like a 6 out of 10, I guess. Not the best stuff we're going to see from Deb. Deb and Lundy, though, not a terrible combination. It's just a little weird. We'll say that, though. Now, the villain of this season, we don't have like a really like a villainous killer or someone like that who's ruining everyone's day in the same way that we did last season. And I think this is the season that's hardest to officially say, okay, this was the villain, this was the villain. So as far as antagonists go, that's how we're going to be looking at the villains. We have Dokes and we have Lila, right? Lila, again, I told you, she is awful. She is not awfully written, just she's a terrible person. And so, yeah, that's pretty compelling. Dokes finding out about Dexter and all that stuff, that is also very compelling. So this is a really strong season as far as antagonists go. So I'm going to give the villains, if you will, a 9 out of 10.
Surprise, mother.
Moving into my notes, I think overall this is a very, very good season of television. Kind of like the same as the first season. Again, very well written generally. I will say, though, this is a bit of a nitpick, but it's very similar to what I said last season. I think the plot of this season would have specifically been better for a final season of the show, because that would be an interesting way to wrap things up. Dexter is actively running from the police. They're finally on to him. And so he would have to reconcile with everything that he's done. And then, you know, if Deb finds out what she finds out later on, he would have to work through that with her. Or if she just finds it out somewhere in the last season, if this plot was going on in the last season, completely changing their relationship. That would be very fascinating. So I just think there was a lot of potential that this season plot would have been better utilized at the end of the series. There's also another glaring issue that happens in the finale of this. Before I talk about that, actually, let's talk about the finale, generally speaking. The finale is not great. So here's kind of what happens. Lila finds Dokes in the cabin that Dexter has been holding him in. She kills Dokes, essentially, with her crazy arson abilities. So Dexter gets off scot-free, and everyone thinks it's Dokes and that Dokes died in this cabin or whatever, okay? But then Lila, being the psycho female dog that she is, she kidnaps Astor and Cody, Rita's kids, and she holds them hostage. She tries to burn them alive. Dexter saves them, thank goodness. And then he finds her in, like, Paris or whatever, and then he gives her the... Yeah, but generally, I think this is one of the weakest season finales that we get in the show. Now, we do get a few pretty weak finales. We'll talk about those later on. But in the meantime, not a great finale. The rest of the season, though, generally speaking, is pretty good. So I'm going to tie this one with season 1, and I'm also going to give this an 8 out of 10. And ladies and gentlemen, that is my review of Dexter Season 2. Make sure you guys stay tuned. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see my review for Dexter Season 3. Or if I've already done it and posted it, check that out right there. See the iCard? That is where you can find my review for Dexter Season 3. If you like this video, drop a like. If there's anything I may have missed that might be worth talking about, I'll leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you guys, see what you guys think. If you really like this video, if you really eat this up. Like I said, plenty more where that came from. And if I did not mention this at the beginning, I'm going to say it now. I'm going to be dropping a supercut, okay? I'm going to edit all of my reviews together, and I have a little bit of material I'm going to insert as well that I'm not putting in my normal reviews. Some little bits to kind of glue them together, if you will, a few of the review seasons. And I'm also going to be ranking these seasons in my reviews. Make sure you guys stick around for that as well. It's very, very important that you do. But in the meantime, I'm Case Swope. I will see you guys for Season 3. But in the meantime, I will see you in the next one.